everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Stoike with For Better, For Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
Hello. How are you? Tango, stop that. I have new digs in my house, and my animals are very emotional about why they can't be in the same spot that they were. So he's going around the other side to try to get to me, and there's no way in. Anyway, that's one of the starts of the day in the life of a dog trainer. Hi, guys. So today, I think we've talked about this topic before, and we just wanted to touch upon it. In a day in the life of a dog trainer, all of our lives are different. So I wanted to kind of go over that and just other things about dog trainers and our profession in general. So a day in my life, I teach lots of group classes. So I work from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m., 3 days a week mostly. And then on the other days, I do private lessons at my facility. Back when I started, I used to do more in-home privates. I don't do those anymore only because time is a big issue for me. So in a day in the life of me as a dog trainer, I get up and I teach classes, and I teach 4 or 5 hours of classes in a row, and then I have a break, and then so on. So one of the things that some of the newer dog trainers that were coaching and teaching them into the industry, they find it very tiring just to teach 1 or 2 classes. But I've been doing it so long that doing 7 hours of classes is really pretty normal for me, actually. It's like I vacation when I only have, 3 or 4, right? So, and that's mostly what I do. Again, I've done the gamut. I've done in-home privates for long periods of time. I've done group classes, and I still do private lessons more for behavior problems at the facility. But then I teach mostly nose work group classes and some behavior adolescent type classes as well. So I teach a lot. And I am very lucky. I have a facility I can do those in. So that's one aspect of dog training. So that's a day in the life of my life as a dog trainer. So Joanne, yours is a little different.
Yes, mine is a little different. So I have a 40-hour-a-week day job. So I work for John Deere during the day, and then thankfully, that's why COVID was kind of awesome. I mean, not really, but I got to work from home. And so even now they're only making us go back 1 day a week. So it's super great. I was not home very much prior to COVID. So, I go to work. I work Monday through Friday, basically 8 to 4:30. And then I also have a facility. So I'm there 4 days a week teaching classes at night, and then I try to have 1 day off, but unfortunately these days it seems like I'm filling it up with private lessons. I think we talked about that a little bit last week. We can get into it a little more, but it's just like everyone seems to be needing extra help these days. So, and then of course, and I know Nancy didn't mention it, but I know her and I both on weekends we're doing nose work things, we're hosting trials, we're judging trials, we're doing that sort of thing. So not every weekend, but it's pretty darn full. Yeah. And usually if we don't have a weekend filled up, we'll put a workshop or something in there.
Right. Yes. And she's right. Yes. We also do workshops, educational workshops too. So yes. Yep. That's kind of, but the combination that we have is not typical, just so you're aware. Not normal for most. And Lisa's even different still.
Yeah. I do, so I live in a different area, of course, and I will do in-home private lessons. I do day school. I'll do board and train. And periodically I'll do some group classes. It's been, I'm super particular about the classes I do in terms of what the need is. My focus is more I love the sports stuff, but some of the stuff I find right now, especially working in a rescue community, um, is the whole relationship building stuff. So for me, that's been where I spend my time. So
She also teaches workshops at my facility as well.
yeah,
So she does those two on top of all the other stuff she does.
yeah,
So to be honest, a lot what we do is very atypical. It's not normal. But you see, our profession has a wide range of things you can do and how you can do it. So one of the things I wanted to, and I know I've said it before and we've talked about it before, our industry, dog trainers, is not regulated. So the main reason I keep mentioning it, in the general public, you want to be smart about who you're going to for classes, and have a process or a way to think about it. Because the truth is, what we can do to be a dog trainer and to hang your shingle, you don't even have to, like Joanne said, we were talking earlier, you don't even have to take a class. You can just say, I'm a dog trainer, I know a lot about dogs, hang out your shingle, and you're a dog trainer. And nobody's going to come and regulate that. So, or if you've taken one class, you can do that. So, which brings us to, we are also seeing a lot of private lessons as a result of people going to trainers who are not qualified and are causing additional issues with the dogs that already have issues. So it's one of those, people need to be more careful, especially if they're having a behavior issue, what they're looking for and what they're, and just be a little bit more inquisitive about what they do and what they don't do, and ask a lot more questions, right? Because that's what you would like. I started going to a personal trainer. It came from a recommendation. We had an interview. I checked him out. I told him what my needs are, and I interviewed him. I wasn't just going to say, okay, and take a chance of getting hurt or whatever. I'm older. I need somebody who's going to understand where I am at in my journey, right? So, and because their industry is also not regulated, much like ours, right? Personal trainers, it's not regulated. It's a lot like ours. So, I asked a lot of questions, and I wanted to know, how he learned and what he's done, and he did come from a referral, but I still went through that process, right, of asking a lot of questions.
One of the things I'd like to say too is, like, when I go to look for a doctor, just because the doctor specializes in that particular. So, like, right now, some of you may or may not know, I'm dealing with my mom. She's currently living with me. And so she has some health issues going on. And so for me, I have to be her advocate because there's a variety of issues. So for me, like, I'll go to the doctor, but the doctor's like, they say this and this and this. Well, for me, I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you know what you're doing. I trust your experience. I think more than I trust some of the like credential and stuff out there, because there's so many techniques, right? And it's so relative. I'm looking for a person who is flexible and is able to adjust to who I am and my mother are in our relationship, right? So to me, that's critical. That's critical information. I'm going to build a better relationship with that person. I'm going to have more respect for them because they respect my position and don't treat me as the average, like, patient and so forth, if that makes sense. But I think that's pretty typical across the board. We have to be their advocates for dogs, and not just the advocate for the dog, but also the advocate for us and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think with some of the credentials that are out there, they promote a specific aspect or technique. They don't necessarily specifically say, well, and to me, and this is where I've always questioned what direction I want to head, because, like, I believe in positive, but I also believe in consequences to behavior. So
Right.
that doesn't make me a purely positive trainer, but hey, if I'm speeding and the cop catches me, guess what? I have to answer to it. It's, part of life. And I think that is sorely missing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you've gotten that credential and you're purely positive doesn't make you perfect, nor does it make like a person who inhibits behavior as a trainer inhibits behavior and suppresses it, they're not the end all be all either, because in my opinion, like, dogs still should have choice and freedom to make specific choices, right? And then learn this is just what we do. And then that builds my relationship better. So I kind of jumped into different topics, but that's me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too. I was gonna go into the doctor thing, but you already did. So one of the other comments that I'll make, Nancy mentioned, right? She was interviewing personal trainers, right? So the one that she actually went with, when she asked him what credentials he had, I believe he said he didn't have any, right?
No, he did not.
Right, but the way he answered the questions and the way he talked about how he worked and the way, right, that she felt like that was going to be a good match. I'm guessing you're having a really good experience there, right?
Yes, he's awesome. Yep.
There, and this is where the dog trainer piece becomes really, really hard, because I can wake up in the morning and decide I'm going to offer private lessons because, I like dogs, right? And you might hire me and I might not do a single thing for you, and yet you're still going to pay me. But, I know, like, someone like me, I don't have any letters behind my name as far as dog training happens. And, when people ask, well, what kind of credentials do you have? I say, I spent many years and thousands of dollars trying to educate myself, and that never stops. And, if you have a specific question, I'm happy to answer it. But, if you want to know what test I passed, I haven't taken any. So
yeah, and that's what I mean. And not to say that that getting certifications or whatever isn't a good thing, but you still must put the trainer through all those same. And especially a lot of the people who don't have the experience do end up getting those credentials because that's all they've got, right? So you definitely want to ask the right questions. So that being, how many dogs have they worked? How have they worked the dogs? How many cases of whatever issue they've had? Granted, they can tell you anything, but you should also look for referrals, right? You should be able to call one of their previous or email or whatever that they can call and say, and you can talk to them and say, hey, how was this person or that person? And and that should be a given. Well, luckily, with those of us that have a facility, we always invite people to come and watch our classes.
Right.
Come and check it out. See what we are all about. Walk around our building. See how we train. Check out the different instructors. Come and check it out, because that's how you're going to know if we're going to be a good fit for you. And that, to me, it's like, and you can sit through a class, watch us, how we train. Is this going to be something that works for you? And if it's not, that's fine. Right. Because, like Lisa said, we are mostly positive, but there is consequences for bad behavior. And going back to this, everybody gets a trophy and no, you can't say the word no. That's happening with child rearing. It's happening with dogs too, where you just don't say no or just ignore the behavior or whatever. Sometimes, depending on the behavior, sure. And other times, nope. There's got to be a consequence for that. And usually the big thing is you want to be fair. You want to make sure the dog understands what you're asking. And then you can, APDT, it's a great network of other trainers, but that's what what it is. If somebody's looking for, like, I'm a member of APDT, and it's great, but you don't have to, like any organization, they've had their issues too, but mostly the CPDT, you can take a test, and now there's a KA where you can send some video and all that stuff, but. It's to me, it's like Joanne said, we spent lots of time, money. Lisa and I drove all over the place, trying to get more education and knowledge, spend lots and lots of money doing that, and continue to do that, to go to different and look at different things and ask different professionals and see. and follow that scientific route, right? But we've also have worked with, now it's in the thousands of dogs. So now, in the beginning it wasn't very many. Now we've seen, wow, I couldn't even begin to guess how many dogs that is between all the, it's crazy. Granted, we've been at it quite a long time, right? But like I'm in the process, I have 3 or 4 new trainers, right? And they're starting to learn. I'm starting to, and they're in that process, right, of figuring things out and looking at dogs. And unfortunately, there's no replacement for time. Spending time with the dogs, spending time with the people, and and it's challenging in a group class because you're dealing with dogs and people, not only dogs, right? You have to deal with their owners too. So,
Yep. Morgan says, you were the farthest away, but watching you, I knew that, yep, she's it. So yeah, it's real similar to the whole doctor thing too, right? I needed a neurologist and I was asking around and there's nobody in my area. So I drove an hour away to the better doctor, right? Because that's who I'm going to trust to take care of me. So it should be the exact same for a dog trainer. It's not the closest or cheapest. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And that's really important to remember. You get what you pay for,
Oh,
Right.
big time. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, and here's the other thing. I'll tell you, and you guys know because we've discussed this, but I do undercut myself. I undercut myself because you know what? My motive is not about making money as much as about helping people. Because if you're doing anything, whether it's rescue or, I don't know, dog training, good luck with that because you are not going to be a rich person. I mean,
No.
I mean, and you guys know as well as I do. I'm like, I don't do this. I do this because I want to make a little bit of a living to survive. It's not as if, and I'm in a fortunate position that I have a husband that I don't have to rely upon having a regular job. At one point I did. And, but it's more about, how you can contribute to society.
Right.
And that to me is important. Like, and that's the other thing that's important is like, first of all, like when you look at the, I'm not saying credentials are bad, but you have to understand what the credentials are because like certain ones
Right.
are techniques. There are other ones that are about specific behavioral issues that you've shown stuff. I mean, there are so many, and there, like you said, there's no regulatory body, so there's no even agreement on one way to train a dog. And I think what's important is to like broaden your horizons to say what are the options and why would I choose this based upon who's in front of me. But
Yeah, and it's true because it's like nobody gets into dog training to make money. I mean, nobody, because I had a job making a lot of money. I didn't have to do the dog training thing. I had a very, very good corporate job, and I left it. I left it because I wanted to do something more meaningful with life, right? And unfortunately, in this particular profession, money is just not there, right? You're just not gonna. You can make a okay living, but you're not gonna be, you're not gonna be driving a Bentley, or you're not gonna be driving a Mercedes, or you're not gonna have Fendi or Gucci, because that's sure not gonna be your lifestyle, right?
it's like you're lucky if you meet my treat every week is a massage. I'm like, this is my treat. This is what I'm spending extra on, and that's it. It's like
I gotta take another dog in to make sure I get my.
All right.
yes.
No,
But
that's one of the reasons, right? Like, thankfully, I have a job that allows me work-life balance, or should I say work balance? Because that's really what it is. But I don't have a significant other, right? So it is just me. So yeah, I could probably make a go of it with just doing the dog training. But I mean, when I think about that, like I get a 401k, I get a pension, I get paid vacation.
Right.
You own your own business. There's no more vacation for free. There's no more, anything. I lose my health insurance, right? I have to do that myself. So I don't know. For me, like the financial security of being able to stay and do both, it's a no-brainer for me. So
Right. Yeah, because Joanne is right. There is no vacation when you're, especially when you own your own business. There is none of that, and there is, it's a little bit different. And even though I love the teaching piece and helping people and all that, the the entrepreneurial part is the most challenging for me. It's been the most difficult to work with. The administrative, the HR piece, all of those have been very, 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 very difficult for me, and just extremely stressful. The dog training part is the best part. It's what I it's the best part for me. It's all the rest of it that's challenging. Um, so so anyway, so in and with dog trainers, the other thing you want to also ask them, if they can't deal with whatever problem you're having, what are they going? How are they going to help you, right? Because there are times when we don't have the answer, we don't know the answer, and a good dog trainer should tell you that. I'm not sure what the answer is on this one. These are things we could try, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. They should be honest. They can't, because one of the things about dog training in general, the dog trainers kind of carry themselves like experts, right? And people just, believe it. Oh, they seem like they know. If somebody is very eloquent and extremely, very eloquent, and they can present themselves well, they can tell you anything, and you'll be like, well, okay. So you want to make sure you really think about it and you really look at what they're telling you, and if it doesn't feel right to you, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Because I went to, this reminds me, many years ago, when I was, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I went to a dog class, and it did not feel right to me. It was very stressful. It wasn't fun at all. I didn't enjoy it. My dog was stressed. It was awful. And it wasn't fun. And, my gut was like, no, this isn't. And now it's like, I want people to, like, if it doesn't feel good, go with that.
Right.
Right.
Well, I know, and I've gotten, like, when I deal with in-home privates and stuff, this one said this, and I try not to judge. I mean, everybody's at different levels in their journey, and it's like, I'm like, well, I remember when I was there, or I'm not quite there. You know what I mean? You try to give people the benefit of the doubt based upon where they are in their journey. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for experience and exposure and learning multiple ways that are not necessarily with the flow of life. I mean, we have to be open, I think, as trainers, to understand what the other alternatives are out there. And I think we also owe it to our clients to be fair in terms of to them and to their dogs. Like, I've met, like, I'm sure you guys have met that too, where you've met people who have different expectations that their dog should be this, and then their dog's like, no, this is who I am. And then trying to help them understand each other so they can come to some sort of just a way to cope and live together. I mean, like, I tell people all the time, I joke around, I'm like, my mom wanted me to marry a doctor, right? And here I am, a dog trainer. Like, hello, that's so different than what that person expected of me. And I think that as trainers, we need to actually help mediate some understanding between, dogs and the people.
Right.
I think that's something that's missing. Like, I would want, like, I use my dogs, like, I'm thinking of Fender, for example. I wanted him to be he came out of my dog Lucas, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to be awesome because Lucas is awesome. And, and then we talk about the breeding aspect, which is so different, right? And that's a whole nother topic altogether. But, I wanted this out of this dog, and he's like, I can't. And it took me a while. It took me a while to understand that. It took me a while to process it. And then when I did, I was like, it's not fair for me to want this of you when I know you can't do this. So I think a lot of times trainers take those dogs who, like, they're just this part, and they take it and try to stuff the dog into that hole to, like, get the behaviors. And to me, it's like, I don't feel like I wouldn't pay for that. I mean, truly, like, if I'm doing something that's not right to my dog, I want to know. you
Right.
know?
And that's and going and to piggyback to that, some of the more novice trainers, they only know one way to do it. That's the only way they know. So it's not that they're being mean or jerks or anything like that. It's just they don't know another way, right? And that's what I said. And I have a couple of trainers that are on that I see that you guys are on, and you guys have always, the ones that are on, have always reached out, asked questions, and trying to figure it out. That's what it's all about. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to look for the answers. And Morgan, especially, she constantly will ask me questions like, "Hey, I got this going on. I got that going on. What do you think?" Blah blah blah. And that's and we do that with each other as well. Like, I have this or I have that, and that's what it should be, because nobody has all the answers. And you can get stumped. I still, after all this time, it's like, something's just not shaking out right. I'm missing something. And it's great to be able to say, "Hey, look at this. What do you think of that?" Because a new, fresh pair of eyes might be very helpful. So if there's and a lot of trainers that, and especially in our area, they never do that. They never do that. They'll just figure it out.
So, Joanne, what do you see in your area? Because I'll comment on what I see in my area, but I'm curious what you see. Do you see a combination? Do you see, I know it all? This is the way.
There's a lot of floggers in her area.
There's a lot of floggers. Yes, I'm trying to find words to be.
That's Amy's word, and I appreciate it because it fits.
There is a lot of methodology that has not improved since the 80s. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Right. And then,
yes, they're still in the 80s. The 70s wants their training methods back.
Keeler would be proud. So even some of the youngsters that I'm seeing coming up, right? They're advocating like, these are great. This is how I train, and it's stuff from like before they were born, right? So, and I think most of the stuff we have here, behavior-wise, is private lessons. So I don't know very many. I mean, I know names, but I can't tell you that I've never met them in person. I don't know. I've seen people, well, they said this and they said that. And, if I get the private, sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. Like, let's try and figure out. Let's try and ask the dog and see what they say about this or that. But I don't have a magic wand. And they're like, well, you don't know? I'm like, no, like, I'm not magic.
Right.
But
we would be rich if we were magic. I'm just saying.
I'll say in my personal opinion, I respect you way more if you're like, I don't know, but I'll work and try and figure it out, right? And, just to what Nancy was saying earlier, I think in the last 3-4 months, especially since, Lisa's become regular here, we've all reached out to each other, sharing a video, hey, and we think we might know, but like, hey, what do you think about this? Am I right? It's just so nice to be able to trust, because I don't know if it's women or the business in general, but it's not a very welcoming and sharing environment, I don't feel.
No, it isn't. That is for true. And I think it is. And this, because talk about tangents, we can go off on a whole nother one. And this is, I've been in corporate for a long time. And even in that environment, it was still better than the dog training environment. Women are not good with each other. That's why we don't need any enemies. We're good just beating ourselves up and cutting each other at the knees all the time. And I did not come from that environment in my corporate job. Even though there was an occasional issue, it was very rare. And we had a bunch of women that used to help other women become entrepreneurs and all that. And our goal was to help other women. And so that's the environment I came from. And in the dog world, it is not like that at all. So it was a very rude awakening for me. Because the truth is, there's always enough business for everyone.
Yes.
There's always, there will always be somebody who needs our help, and there'll always be that. So it's just what it is. And I'm not sure why everybody, and it would be great. Like, I know Sandra down south, somebody's asked, hey, anybody down south that we can refer to, always send them to Sandra. And Sandra's also really great about, hey, how about, I have a question. I have this. Sarah, California is really
different.
Yeah, and you know what, Sarah? Now that you mention it, I was thinking about that, and Lisa and I briefly talked about it, about setting up a group of trainers in our area that we can share ideas. And I was thinking also specifically for, doing some. He figured it out, didn't he?
I was gonna say, I see you found his way.
I know.
So yeah, it's something I was thinking about. I had set something up with some people in the East Coast and down south, a couple of trainers, but it fizzled away. We were so busy, had a difficult time doing that. But yeah, we were talking about that, setting up a group that we could share ideas and put information in a more positive light, right? Because there is a group local that's the Northern Illinois, but it's okay, but they use it a lot for referrals and stuff like that, and it's pretty much the same people and the same referrals and the same places and all that, so it's not really inclusive with a lot of stuff. So, but yes, I was actually thinking about that. That would be nice to be able to talk and have ideas and be able to do that and ask questions if you will. So yeah, something that in California it seems to be a little bit more of a
progressive,
more community. Yeah, Midwest not so much.
I think though it's more about a trainer's mindset, right? It's not about getting my name out and being the biggest and being the best. It's about the dogs. Like,
right.
I don't care if you take the private or I take the private, as long as that dog's life gets better. That is, to me, the most important thing.
Right. So yeah, so that was something that I did think about, that, like having where we can share ideas and dog trainers. It's a tough, and you always have to check your ego all the time, because if you think you know everything, you're screwed. You're already dead in the water. But it's true. It's like, if you think you know everything, because I wish I did, but if you think you know everything, you're dead in the water. You're never going to get better, and you're always going to have issues.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the sad truth to that. You're not dead in the water. Someone will always hire you.
Yeah.
That's sad, but you're right.
You know what I mean? You're still going to have a career. You're hurting yourself, and you're hurting those dogs by not trying to be the best you can be for the dog.
Right.
I wish it were true that you would be dead in the water, but it's not. So
yeah. But they're eventually, some of them do go away. We've had a few in our area that they were just not, they weren't, Yeah, Elizabeth, as the dog world is tough, but it's very rewarding too. So that's why you keep at it. You keep at it, and so you see the posts of the people that you were helpful, and because I'm gonna tell you, I've had times that I'm like, you know what, I am tired, because here's the thing, you guys, we sometimes will go through we get very invested in the dog. We do care about the dog very much. We give people that information. We give them what's going to work. And the people decide, oh, no, I'm not doing that. And so the dog is screwed, because the dog's not going to get the help it needs. And you just spent all this time, and you feel ineffective at times. And there are days when you have enough of those, you're like, oh my God, why do I even bother? And then you get that one person that says, you made such a difference for me and my dog. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it always seems to come when you're ready to just call it a day.
Like the mob.
It's when you're like, damn. It's like always comes at that time when that person says, oh, if it wouldn't be for you guys, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. fine, I get it. And you go on and you keep doing it again, and you keep going and you keep going.
Well, and you know what? Here's the other thing too. It's like, Carrie, thanks for that comment. She said, I did that for her dog Simba, but here's the deal, right? She had a second dog that had reactivity issues, and what she learned on the first dog, she could apply to the second dog, and so she's getting better. And so every dog she's going to have in her life is going to be better and better because she's learning too. So it is really heartwarming. I love it.
Yeah, and it's true because it's like the change, and that's why I told this to Lisa when we opened the business. When I opened the business a long time ago, we talked about it a lot. We were like, if we can make the difference for one person, those subsequent dogs will have a different life. And it's really cool to see it because we've had clients, because now it's been 18 years, we've had clients that now have on their third or fourth dog, and yes, that dog's life is so much better because of all the stuff they learned with us, right? And their lives are, those dogs have better lives because of it. So you get to see it now. At that time, we didn't see it because we were just starting, but now after all this time, you're like, okay, you see that you're able to embrace that and see, okay. Because sometimes you think, am I even making a difference? Sometimes you think, am I even touching it? But
well, and I think we all go through that, right? So like for me, I did I went ahead, I got a place, I did all that stuff, and then made a business choice, didn't work out the way I'd hoped, and then had to kind of define what I was doing. Life happens. And you know what? I realized that for me, the whole, there's something I keep coming back to, and like, you cannot care more about anyone else's progress or their life than they care about.
Yes.
And to me, it's like,
yes.
And that's been difficult for me because it's like, I look at who the dog is and their potential and so forth, and whether or not they choose to go with what I think is good for the animal, it's like, it doesn't, what my goals are for them is so different than, to me, it's like, I want my dog to do these things, and they just want their dog to like not bark or not potty in the house. And I'm like, okay, your dog is so much more potential, right? But you can't want it more than them, and then you can't blame them for not wanting it more than you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And to me, that has been like so profound, because what I think a dog should do is not better or worse than anyone else, but it's like, to me, it seems to be life skills, what I would consider life skills. Like, if I wanted to take my dog out and about, I want them to like not pull me and learn how to hang out and
right.
A nuisance. But not everybody has that goal.
Right.
You just want to be able to socialize with their dog and so forth. And I think part of training and being a trainer is being able to not just read who the dog is, but read the room and the person that's involved in that relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that to me is huge. And I grew up in the 80s. So for me, it's astounding that we don't have the type of, just the way, the cohesiveness of community that we had before.
Right.
Now it's so different, and it's hard to grasp it. And some days are harder than others. And, to me, it becomes really challenging. And to me, it's not, the days that I have hard days don't really have to do with the dog. They have more to do with the owners, right? Because you're like, your dog is doing so well. And, it can be very difficult. And then from a rescue situation, like, you try to make your best decisions and you get slammed, and it sucks. It sucks hard. And people don't understand, because as much as I adore dogs and love dogs, I still like people. And you have to still like people if you are a trainer, you can't like dogs and working with dogs, because their people are attached. They're the ones paying the bills. So guess what?
Right.
So anyway, I'll get off.
But that brings a very good point. The majority of the people who become dog trainers don't like people. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? How do you not like people? People are part of it. But you have many, many, many that they don't really like people. And I'm like, I just don't know how you do that. I love people. So, and I always have. And so, and I found that I was kind of an anomaly in that regard, right? Because it's like you have to like people and be able to, you also have to be able to read people as well, right?
Yes.
Right? You have to read people too.
Right.
Because sometimes you're like, okay, that's not.
I remember one day it was kind of a rough week, right? And so you go through privates and you're dealing with stuff, and it was just hard. You know, we all have them those weeks or days or what have you, or spells, right? That person's in a bad place. That, you know, we kind of talk about that. And then I remember it was a situation we walked in.
Yes, now I know who you are, Kelly. I was educated.
So, but it was a really tough day in that regard, and I walked in, and to be able to read the room, there was some tension between the couple. It was a young couple with a newborn baby. The dog was barking, and I just felt that the tension was impacting how the dog's behavior was, and just kind of made it more nervous, because the dog was super smart. But, you know, it's like you have to read the room, right? And to me, you can try stuff, but I think there's other things going on that you might need to reconsider your future plans for this particular dog. So it was really uncomfortable, because sometimes we actually become family mediators, right? So that becomes a whole nother issue. You're like, look, I'm having a problem with my own marriage, let alone dealing with yours. Like, you know, so it's crazy, but I have to say, like, it provides a lot of just different viewpoints of life, and I think it's super important for us, like, to maintain humanity, just humanity for people, for each other, for dogs, blah blah blah, to appreciate that, you know. And I think we're missing that, and that to me is really sad. But.
Yeah, and meet people where they are, right?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And I think it takes years and years to get there, right, too, but not be afraid to say, this is not the dog for you, right? Like, if you want to do this, this is what's involved, and this is how long it's going to take, and this is all the work, you know. But, like, it's kind of like Lisa said earlier, you're trying to fit that square peg into the round hole. It's just, you know, I had one, and the dog was very nervous, and it was like, oh yeah, you know, both sets of in-laws live with us, and me and my husband, and we adopted 4 children, and this dog was like, not really into people. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Aww.
You know. And so, what do you think? Do you think he'll bite again? Yes, absolutely. Right? Like, I don't know what you want. I'm not going to lie to you. Well, right. Give my friend kind of wants him because she just lost her dog. Do you think? I think that'd be a great idea if, you know, her friends buy it. It's just her. It's just, you know. So those moments are like, it's so hard to, you feel like you're crushing that owner. But when you're trying to make the best decision for both the person, their household, and that dog, and that's where it's, I feel like earlier on in any dog trainer's career, right, you're like, I gotta fix that dog. And it's like, sometimes that's not the answer, you know.
But yeah, and fixing is relative, right? What's
right?
You know, this is interesting. So we've kind of talked about this, Kim Brophy, who does this family dog mediation, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. Well, anyway, she talked about it. She's like, well, and I don't know if it was her specifically, but it was in a course that I was taking with her, that she had said that just because, like, and maybe again it was a reiteration of someone else, but just because we can change behavior, should we actually take that power into our hands? And then the question is, what motive, right?
Right.
Why?
And why are you going to change the behavior? Is it going to be to the benefit of the family and the dog?
Right.
And if it's if it's to the benefit of one and not the other, then it's not a good.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, it's interesting. Like, let's be honest. The dogs do what we say, what pays off for them. Regardless of what technique we do, every dog is different. And the dogs that fight against whatever technique the person utilizes is the dog that is deemed, you know, untrainable and stubborn, and then they do crazy stuff with it and go harder in terms of techniques. And so for me, it's like, I just don't understand, like, why do you want this? And when I interview or talk to people, because I do evaluations before, like, know me. No, I'm not gonna blow smoke up your rear end. It's not who I am. If you want to know the truth of whether or not your dog is safe or is this potentially fixable or what have you, I'll tell you yes, no, maybe, and I have no idea. And so most of the time, the only guarantees I ever make to people is that if you are committed to your relationship with who this animal is, then that's like everything. That's I'm happy to help you. I mean, like, and I can't guarantee that we're going to make strides, but I can guarantee that I'll be committed to who you are and what your dog needs and help you guys understand. But if you're not going to take the steps, so like when I do private or when people want evaluations and stuff, I'm like, hey, guess what? You need to provide me with videotape of the behaviors that you think are inappropriate that you want to address. Now, to me, if you commit to that, I'm willing to commit to you, right?
Right.
Because you've taken that step, and that's a free evaluation. I do not expect money for that because to me, it's like I want to know who you are, who your dog is, and you can see that with various snippets, right? And that can tell you a little bit more about what's happening because sometimes, you know, as well as I do, any of you guys have done in-home privates, the dogs present differently because our energy is much different
Mm-hmm.
when I walk in the door, right? They're like, oh, they're doing so much better with you. Yeah, well, I'm not puppy, puppy, puppy. Touch me, let's talk. I'm not doing that. I'm like, hey, what's up? Let's talk about what's happening, you know, and that kind of stuff. And so I think, you know, those are things people understand. Like, I'm not here to be your dog's friend as your trainer. I'm here to help you and them understand who you are because dogs don't have to like me. I'm okay with it. And I don't have to pet all the dogs.
But most of them it's like, you get me.
Right. And so once you're, you know, and once the dog, you set those rules, the dogs are like, cool, I understand. That's awesome. Thank you. Right. And I think that is a true telltale of, and there's a different, right? It's almost like an appeasement behavior versus let's talk. There's a difference. And I don't know, you probably have seen it, right?
Right.
A dog and you chum them up. Like when I remember being a young trainer and chumming them up a lot. Get lots of cookies and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, I like you. You have something I like. And let's talk and so forth. But there's a difference. And then as you grow, you learn how to have proper discussions, right?
Right.
You learn, and this happens in people, you learn how to have conversations or disagreements with people that have a different political view, religious view, whatever the heck is happening in the world right now. And you're still able to work with them regardless, right? And
Right.
so to me, there's a difference in maturity when you're a new trainer versus when you've kind of learned the nuances of what's happening.
Right. Well, and part of, for me, part of being a more, and when you're a young trainer, you see you can fix everything and help everyone. And then, but you quickly realize that's not how it goes, right? Because it just doesn't go like that. It would be nice, but, and where you have to, and like you said, sometimes the answer is, like Joanne said, rehoming the dog or returning the dog or trying to fix it, you know, right?
Yeah.
The answer could be any of those, any of the above.
Can I ask a question? I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm not sure. Did either of you guys do rescue before you became dog trainers?
Um,
Yes.
Lisa, you?
So I started out as a student of Nancy's. I took all my dogs through her. So I had like a Maltese, a Shih Tzu mix, a Poodle mix, and a Yorkie Poodle mix. And then I got my Papillon, Max, who was like starting me off on agility and going nuts, right? So I got more into training then. Before it was just fun and so forth. And I did like only through Nancy did somebody had told me because, you know, I love dogs, of course. And I'm like, why not have a gazillion of them? And so I got,
As we all did as youngsters.
right. Let's have a thousand. And now I have to tell you, I'm like, 5 is good.
Yeah.
This is so much. I'm just, I don't know. But anyway, I'm like, how did I even do so many? But anyway, so I think going back to what you were saying was I got into it because like Nancy had like there was what was it, Chris and Tony Montagno, right?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And they went Save a Pet up in Grays Lake.
Yes.
And then Nancy goes, "Hey, do you want to foster?" I'm like, "Okay, let's do another little. Why not?" And she goes, "I think it's a Papillon because I had Papillons." Right. That's how it works, right? And so she's like, "I think it's a Papillon." I'm like, "Okay." And so of course I lied to myself, saying it's a Papillon Pom mix, whatever. It looked more Pom. It was Zach, and he was named Ticket. And he, like, I got into that because he was terrified.
Yeah.
Like, he had a, so they had to go in and take out the testicles, right?
Yeah.
So he was super, like, hard to handle. He never liked being handled. It took me like weeks before I could actually touch him. It was crazy, and that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
I asked that question because I feel like we all sort of started in
Yeah.
the rescue world, and you're like, okay, I thought I knew some stuff, but I need to know some more stuff, right? And then you get those dogs that you're like, I don't know that I can adopt you out, and that was just soul crushing, right?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I worked for another trainer as I taught some classes, and I was like, there's something better here, but I just feel like maybe even as a young trainer, I feel like I had a head start because I was taking in all those dogs to live with, right? It wasn't like, here's an hour and bye. You had to find your way to keep everybody safe and to, do your job. And
Right.
anyway, I just,
Yep. No, because I was doing a min pin rescue before I became a.
You also did Beagle rescue, I thought.
And I did Beagle rescue
in
lab. Yeah. So I was.
Oh, you're that too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So I did a lot of rescue before I became a dog trainer, and then realized, oh my gosh. And then I think the rescue is how I got started into learning more and getting better and all that stuff, and then and it led to where I'm at now. But living with a dog that's not your foster and trying to get them ready to go to a new home, that's a whole different way to live with dogs. And then you realize, wow, there's we've got to. What do you do when the owner just doesn't get it? Well, Jill, and this is what we've been saying. Sometimes you have to just let it go, or try to figure out analogies. Like that's why I use analogies a lot. Like if this was like, and this is a very, very simple explanation, but let's say you are having trouble with doing an about turn with your dog, like going another direction, because a lot of people just yank on the dog and expect the dog to come around. Well, would you do that to a person? You would say, come on, let's go this way. You're like, wow, okay. When all you have to do is say, hey, let's go this way. And they're like, oh, okay. So why don't we do that with the dogs, right? And so stuff like that. It's like that. And sometimes putting it in those terms, sometimes people understand it, right? You can, so trying to do analogies where, why would you do it that way, or what is, and then sometimes sometimes like, okay, why do you, why I ask the why question all the time. Why would you do it that way, or what are your thoughts about that? Because it really gives you, that question really gives you a lot of information about where they're at, right? And why they think the way they think and all that. And then you can meet them there. And sometimes the answer isn't what you think it is. The answer is in there somewhere. You just have to fish it out, is basically what it comes down to. And the truth is, Jill, there are people, that's what they want to do. That's how they want to do it. And sadly, it's like a child. If that's how they want to raise their kid, there's not much we can do about that. Sometimes you just have to let them go with all the pain in your heart, right? With the dog.
Yeah, I think one other thing you can do is ask them, like, why do you want to do it this way, right? Make them explain themselves, which, like, just kind of how Lisa said earlier, like the political, the religious, the whatever, sometimes it's like, because that's how we do it. Like, sometimes people are where they are and they're not willing to accept knowledge or change. And that at that moment, you have to be like, I did the best I could. I shared as much knowledge as I could. If you're unwilling to accept it, I don't know what else to do. right?
And sometimes you're not the right person for that person at
Right.
that time in their life.
Right.
So, and that's a thing that's crazy, right? So, like, and this is why it's hard for us or anybody who's a parent. I don't have children of my own, but I would imagine it would be difficult if I had children, I'd be asking, like, okay, this is something that I guess for me, I'm like, well, if they're going to have that issue, like, why are you doing that? If you think it's a different story or something else, a different perspective, we have to respect that and then let them fail or thrive based upon that decision, right? And so then if they come back, and I've had situations where I've said, this is what I think, blah, blah, blah. They went to someone else. They came back to me. And I remember one lady who had a young dog, and I said, something's not going on well. And she didn't want to believe it at the time. And I have to tell you, I was a little put out. But then later when she called, she left me a message just out of the blue a couple of years later and said, you know what, you were right. She actually had a brain tumor. And I was like, part of me was like so grateful that she called, but then my heart broke at the same time for the dog. You know what I mean? Because God knows what she did in the name of training and trying to conform the dog to what societal needs were. I don't know, but she apologized to me, and I'm like, okay, it was very a kind gesture. So like sometimes we do stuff, and working in rescue, one thing I want to say that Kim brought up about is fostering. Yeah, fostering is hard. It's hard on your dogs, on the other dogs in your home.
Yeah.
On you, it's really stressful. And then add to that you're trying to like do other things like go and train other dogs and so forth. And it is very taxing. It is 100% of your day, your time, everything. And the problem with this that I find that anybody, and Joanne and Nancy can account to this because I know you've both gone through this, you get the hard dogs when you have something that you can help with, right?
Right.
You get those hard dogs, and those hard dogs stay with you for months on end.
Yes.
And not that I'm against that, but at the same time, I'm like, and then matching the right dog to the right home, right, is a whole nother pressure in and of itself. Going from a rescue standpoint, like, I remember having a dog, and Nancy, you remember him. Do you remember him? Dexter.
Oh, yes.
So Dexter would resource guard against people, food, and water,
Yeah.
and other dogs. And so then I had this dog for 6 months. I went through some personal stuff and this and that, and I still had this dog. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this dog? And so then the rescue sent me, because they thought I fixed the problem. Look, resource guarding is not something that you fix at a certain age, right? After a certain age, they've trained and learned it and this and that. Now, I got him to a point where he was okay with me, but I still didn't feel comfortable placing him in a family home. I was like, no way. And they kept sending me family homes. So I'm like, no, that's not appropriate, So it's tricky, right? Like, I wanted to help, but at the same time, it almost burnt me out. Not just with that, but other stuff too.
Right.
I mean, you guys know, like, if you've done fostering, you kind of get stuck with some of the more challenging dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I had 7 of them. Yes.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I got that. Mary was asking, do you think the day will come where accredited certification or license will be required? Mary, the only way that is going to happen is if the general public starts demanding a little bit more from the dog trainers. Unfortunately, because remember, it's all money driven, right? If you can hang out your shingle, took a class, call yourself a dog trainer, and you're charging $150 a pop every time you go out to somebody's house, and people are paying you, and you're not accredited, they're not going to want to do that. It's the general public, which is why we do this Facebook Live, even though most of you guys are dog people. But anywho, the reason we do it is that the general public needs to hold the trainers accountable for what they're doing. They must do that. If they don't, the change will never happen. But people blindly follow instructors and don't even ask the question. So until the general public is starting to hold these trainers accountable, because that's what I tell people. you should question your trainer. If you don't understand something or something doesn't sound right, you have every right to say, well, why would we do it that way? Mary, you are a question person. You question everything, which is great because that's how it should be. And if the trainer cannot give you a good answer, then you need to run away.
Yep. And here's the other piece to that, right? What governing body is going to be the one
Right.
to offer that certification? Because to me, right, there are some out there, where you can have the certifications, but to me, it's not bad. You should know the science behind stuff, but it's a book test, right? You don't train dogs behind a book, right? You can't. There would have to be however many hours of video to prove that you can work a dog and you can do these things. And who's going to review that? And who's going to say that worked? You're not quite there.
Right.
So I would love that if there was a day for that, but I would also be real skeptical because as soon as you put the absolutes behind things, I feel like we can lose some change. The dog training world, just like the medical world, just like everything that, we don't know what we don't know till we go, well, that was interesting, right?
Right.
And those people who tend to push that envelope and think outside the box and do things differently aren't gonna feel like they can do that, or I think it might reduce that population a little bit, right? When you put this is what I want, this is the criteria.
And what does that look like is the hard
yeah.
part. What does that exactly look like? So the best we can do for now is make sure that the people really interview these dog trainers, really ask them the right questions, check them out, get referrals, all of those things that are will at least set you up where you're not going to just end up at the hands of somebody who's just that doesn't know and thinks they know. And hopefully they can,
Hello.
Hi, Fido's.
There you go.
Tail.
But one thing I do want to say too is remember, when we talk about training almost reminds me of political parties, Democrat, Republican, Independent, blah 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 blah, or even religion, this religion, that religion, blah blah blah. Right? It's what camp do you fit in? But here's to me what's more important. I don't think it's about camps you fit in. It's about how independent of a thinker are you and what is relative to you and your dog, right? Because there are so many techniques. And to me, I will say I've seen techniques that suppress behavior. And then I say techniques that if I take away that tool that's suppressing the behavior, does the dog have free choice? And what does the dog choose to do? To me, a trained dog, and I think that's where you start out with when you look at people, it's what do you consider trained? Do they just respond on leash? Do they respond off leash?
Right.
Do you expect them to have tools or not? And so starting and understanding the expectation, I think, is critical, right? So, and so many trainers, I've seen stuff. Nice job beating up your cat. Good job. But no, I'm saying I've seen different trainers say this is how it's done. It can never be anything else. And I also find people judging that trainer's ability based upon their accomplishments with their own dogs. Guess what? You know what I mean? To me, it's
nope.
Are you going to go out and do this specific sport and go to that level? What is your goals, hopes, and dreams with your dog? If it's not training nonstop, then maybe some of these other things you want to do, you shouldn't expect of your own dog. It's you know what I mean? So I think it's kind of so much going on at once.
Right. And dog training, it's a balance between science and an art.
Right.
It's not one or the other. It's the combination of both of those things.
Right.
You need to know the science, like Joanne said, but it's also an art form. How do you, it's also an art form, which is why it's so challenging, right? And the other thing I did want to touch upon before we leave, in dog training, like Lisa alluded to, the accomplishments of the trainer, just because it is the requirements or the characteristics required to be a good competitor is not what it takes to be a good coach, right? Or a good dog trainer.
Right.
They're two completely sets of requirements or things that you should possess, right? Because a good competitor and a good dog trainer, they don't need to have the same skill sets. They don't have to have any of the skill sets. So people who base their choosing of a dog trainer based on what they've done with their own dog, what you want to ask, what have they done with other people's dogs? Because that's what's going to tell you where they're at. Not what they've done with their own, because if you have the dogs that you just happen to have a great dog, or you happen to train all the time, or whatever. But you can't train, many, and this is true in sports. My husband's a big sports person. And most of the great coaches in sports have not been great athletes or they haven't achieved a lot of stuff. They've just been average, mediocre, players, but they're extreme. They have they have what it takes to be really great coaches. So those two things, not base one thing on the other. Just because they've done X, Y, Z with their own dog does not mean that it's what have they done with clients' dogs.
Right.
That's the questions you should be asking.
Yep. And you never know what goes on behind closed doors. I'll just throw that one out there.
Yeah, right.
And I think the other, and we talk about this frequently, is like what I would select for based upon my needs and who I am. My temperament or my personality selection is different than somebody who says, hey, I want this service dog to do this and this and this. And, that's different. And I think what's important to understand is, like, if you have a specific need, can that individual help you that you're hiring can help you get to where you want to be with that particular individual dog based upon your requirements, not their goals. Because I think it's crazy too. Like some trainers get crazy about your dog should do this. And I'm like, why? Right. Why is that important? Who is that important to you? Do you care if your dog jumps up on your couch? No? Okay. Why are we wasting our time? Right. So the only time I consider an issue is if the dog starts guarding. Right. So those are some things that I think that people have to learn to flex with. Like, what I consider is important. Like, I would rather them not pull me. I would rather my dog be able to choose me in public rather than going and saying hi to people or dogs, even though they like them. I would like for them to lay down by my side. And to me, that's the biggest treasure of all. Like, everything else on top of that is gravy, right? And again, that's my requirement. My requirements are not better or worse than anybody else's. It is just what I require. Right.
And so that's why it's important to know, for those of you who do dog sports. It's like, just because they're, I've seen some good dogs come from people who maybe aren't so great with their own dogs, but they do great with other people's dogs, and they do a great job of coaching people to what they need to do. So I don't really, because there's a trainer up in this area. She uses pretty heavy-handed, really heavy-handed training methodologies to do a certain sport, and it's awful to watch her train, and the abuse. It's actually borderline an abuse, but she does really well with her dogs in the ring. So she does very well in the ring. So people are like, oh, I want to do what she's doing. Well, what she's doing isn't. I would not do that to my dog, because that's insane. I just don't. I don't see that. Right. I would never do that. But especially for a ribbon, right? There's no way in hell not to get a ribbon.
Right.
But other people see that and they're like, "Oh, she's so great." Really? So you consider this a great thing, and she's doing all these terrible things to her dogs to get a ribbon? I don't understand that, and I wouldn't do it to my dogs. It's like, okay, yay! I feel bad. When you see somebody training their dog and you want to cry, that's not usually something. I just don't see how you could be attracted to that. But
and that's another Facebook Live. But what was that?
Yes,
that was the AKC, like the World Team Tryouts, the Agility World Team Tryouts, and I'm sure a bunch of people saw that video, right? Until the general public or other competitors will step up and hold people accountable for that type of behavior, it will never get better. So I was at an obedience trial. I'm not kidding you. And a lady was trying to get her dog to do a moving stand stay. And so I had my back turned because I was waiting for my dog to get a massage. And all I heard was, and I was like, what the heck just happened? Right. And of course, your eyes are scanning. And I was like, what's going on over there? And I watched, and the dog's moving, and she goes right on the front.
Aww.
And I literally go, hey, 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 hey. I said, don't do that. And she goes, oh, I was like, it's not funny.
No.
Don't do that again. And she literally couldn't believe I would interfere with her training. She went back for a friend. I reported it to the show committee. Nobody did a darn thing.
Yeah.
Nobody did a thing.
You're right. I mean, more people have to stand up, right? Like
Right.
you said, it's like,
Well, Lisa, remember when we were at Schiller, we used to
oh yes,
we
I don't want to remember those days. That was
we used to do obedience drop-ins. We finally had to just stop it. It became so. It was heart-wrenching to see some of the stuff that was happening, and we just stopped it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, you know what? There's not enough money for that to be okay for me. You hear the dog screaming and crying in the ring and all that for a ribbon. I just can't. So it didn't last very long at my place because I couldn't do it. I couldn't take it. I just had to. It was just not something I was interested in doing. But
everyone can be a dog trainer. I empower all of you to go out, and if you see it happening, intervene, because those dogs need it.
Yeah, and so to find, like I said, to look for a good dog trainer, they should allow you to come and watch their classes.
Yep.
They should allow you to come in and watch how they work the dogs. That should be a given. If there's nothing to hide, there's no reason to do, not to be able to do that.
Right.
So I'm a big proponent of that. Also, question everything. Question everything. Why is it that, and they should be able to roll off those answers right off, or better have them say, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'll learn, I'll check on that. Because that to me is better than somebody says, well, and come up with some crazy answer that doesn't really make any sense. But that's why we want you to, you guys, the people out there, are the ones that are going to have to hold these trainers accountable and make sure that you ask the right questions and do right by your dogs and advocate for your dogs. Don't let anybody handle your dog and that's going to abuse your dog, and you have to stand there and take it, right? Or let somebody do those things to your dog, right? Always advocate for your own dog, and then don't let it, because I'm telling you, there's a dog trainer near my house. He has killed a couple of dogs, and he's still in business.
We have one here too. Yep.
Yeah. He killed 2 dogs by hanging it, and the other one was a small Maltese. That one was a pitty, one was a Maltese, and he's still in business. He's still rocking and rolling, making money. So yeah, it's just, there's nothing, and what are you going to do? They report him. Because remember, dogs are property. So
yep, that's the sad part, right?
Yep.
So
he just paid them for the dog, and that was it.
Yep. So, and we talked about getting referrals. One of the first things that I would ask you is anybody that's out there on the internet, look at their Facebook page, look at their Yelp, look at whatever, because most of these ones that, I hate to say, I think they're terrible, but there are some who I think they're terrible. I think they do the wrong thing by dogs, right? You go and you look at some of those reviews, you'll see it all right there.
Right.
So take your time and do your research.
And if you call, the trainer should be able to provide you with a nice list of people that they've done well for, right? Mm-hmm. And all of us have had people who, maybe wasn't a good fit, and everybody's a little angry, so and so you might have 1 or 2 that maybe weren't happy with you, but the majority should be, right? Because that's a given. Sometimes it's just not a good fit, not a good match, and that's what it is. but you shouldn't have a whole lot of those on
Right.
your thing, right? And yeah, but there's a few that have come this way that have, yeah, they've killed dogs and everything else with the, so definitely, and there are people, and people are still going to them, right? Still going. Anyway, well, I hope you found this helpful. And again, you guys have to advocate for your dogs and and ask the right question and hold our industry accountable for really.
Yep.
And do right by you so they can do right by your dog, and talk to the vets too, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you, and then we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.